Welcome to Quick Take. How are you, James Caps?
I'm super proud to be here. How are you?
I'm good. I'm Susie. And James and I are here to talk about the things that are on the minds of people everywhere. That's what we always do.
That's exciting. Yep.
It's exciting. It's exciting. And so I want to talk today about something that sometimes we don't like to consider. It's the idea of power,
Mm.
especially as it relates to impact on other human beings.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I
And
think people talk about power like it's a negative, right? I
yeah,
mean, power, just the way you say that, I have power. There's way too many cartoons, and I think of all the jokes around power, and I think it's a real thing we should talk about.
well, yeah. And it's thought of as a weapon.
Oh,
And
that's exactly right.
it can be a tool. It can be
hmm
something that can be used for good. And we often talk about it in within organizations as influence.
That's right. That's right. And people think, yeah, they conflate the two. I think,
Hmm.
unfortunately, but I think it comes down to a lot of the conversations around influence.
Yeah. It really struck me. I thought this was a really important topic for us because when I work with teams and I work with executives, this is a topic I bring up and I
Oh,
ask
sure.
them who holds influence, who holds power within your organization, meaning like who gets things done, who do people listen to, who do people
hmm
follow? And if it's not you, why not? And what do you need to do to change that? And how should they
Right.
look at it?
No, I think
And
that's right, and I think people forget how to look at it objectively.
mhm.
Sometimes they're offended by power or offended by the influence of others, and I do think it's important to, yeah, to be wise when you talk about it.
Yeah. And I think we get so busy in what we're doing that we don't take a step to look back. And we
Right,
talk about strategy as it relates to the business, but this is also like in creating your impact and being thoughtful about your impact
right,
within the organization. It's time well spent to
right.
really dig into this topic. So let's start to think about what are some of the ways to view power, to use power.
Well, I think that what we were just talking about there is that traditional view of power, which is very hierarchical, right? Where we think power comes from an org chart, power comes from a title, and I think, if we can get away from that 1950s perspective or 1980s perspective of what power is, and understand that there's just different ways to engage with that, the different ways to influence, then it becomes much more of a tool, set of tools in your toolbox, and not just a giant hammer that you try to use on a regular basis.
Yeah. And actually, if you try to use it as a hammer, that's like a short term, like you're just trying to say,
Right.
just talk to me because I'm this title or I'm
That's
this
exactly
person.
right.
Don't you know who I am? And
Yeah,
that's
we
just
know those
crazy.
people. Those people that introduce themselves with their title right after their last name, and that's a different type of power. And I think
Yeah.
progressive leaders, good leaders, long-term leaders, leaders who people want to follow and work for, are the ones that understand how to use power and influence in a different way.
So how do we build it? And maybe let's just talk about why it's important within an organization because, when you people that do have influence, they get things done, people follow them, they pay attention to them, they take care of boundaries or blocks for their team.
Sure.
They're more
Well, I think
effective.
well, I think that's exactly right. And when we talk about, I know at BlackRock and other companies I work with, a lot of leadership is measured by the ability to influence. It's not about the number of
Hmm.
direct reports you have or the role you're in or the
Yeah.
company or the city or the office. It's about how do you influence and get things done. Now, nobody asks how much power do you have. I have an 11. I have 4 bananas worth of power. That doesn't mean anything. It's like, how do I influence people? I think when we really start thinking about power as maybe it's a proxy for influence, we can really see that the importance of influence and the importance of doing that in ways. And I think, I like to think of, there's probably 3 good ways that a leader today can consider
Three.
implementing that. 3 is the number I'm going to go with today. I'm feeling
Just
jiggy.
you're
Just
like a
3.
magician taking a rabbit out of a hat.
That's
Just,
exactly right. I have 3 hats. But I think it goes back to my comment about power being hierarchical. I think at the first and foremost thing that you can influence through, remember that you can influence through collaboration. And I think that
yeah.
that when you can, as a leader, collaborate with others, whether it's your peers, your teams, and mostly people that maybe are outside of your organization, that will move the needle, and that's a different kind of power. Look at
Yeah.
it, power from a collaborative standpoint, that moves, and that I think is probably one of the more effective ways to implement that.
And I think it's because you enact the rule of reciprocity.
Mm, that's
Because
yeah, you're absolutely right.
when you collaborate, you're showing people that you care, you're thinking about how
All right.
to help them with their
Hmm.
problems, you're thinking things through together.
Right,
And
right.
that makes people want to do that for you in the future, and they want to give back to that kind of feeling of you did something for me. And there's
That's
research that
huge.
backs that. I'm just saying.
No, I think that's absolutely true. Those are the moments that people remember. And I think that dovetails well into the second approach to maybe flexing that muscle is really just servant leadership, and
Yeah.
it's different than collaboration is obviously working with others and crossing various boundaries, but servant leadership is about how you work with your teams, putting yourself
Yeah.
second for others' benefit. And I think that's truly the hallmark of a good leader is the ability to take a back seat where necessary, and allow folks to execute, because that's true. That not only grows people and helps them be better, like we talk about all the time, but that is a form of power and how a form of influence.
That's such an important thing, and I think that so many people will agree. But the actual, when the
Oh,
heat
it's so
when the
hard.
heat is on and when things are going really fast, it's so hard to do.
Hmm.
And that's when you really have to, when you feel the stress, kind of step back, zoom out, and go, okay, how am I going to do this in a way that's going to be impactful to the people around me, instead of
Yep.
how am I going to make sure I save myself or get
Right.
myself out of this?
Yeah, but I think you told me one time a great phrase that I've used and shared, which is, when you take a step back, you move forward.
Yeah.
And that's what that is. I mean, that is you taking a step back and allowing things to move in a different direction. And that act of taking a step back is a powerful move. And
Yeah.
I think that people need to remember that.
Yeah. All right. What's number three?
Well, number three, it's an important fact that seems obvious, and I want to pick at it a little bit. But obviously, being inclusive in sharing of that power and bringing other people in with different perspectives, I think is super important. When we talk about inclusion, it's a very hot topic, and I think without it being overly scrutinized, I think there's so many different ways to think about inclusion. And the example that I've always given, and I know actually he's one of our listeners, is a guy that used to work for me at Comcast, and he was one of my direct reports. He was over QA. He was a test led the test organization, and he by definition was a pessimist. And he and I would butt heads all the time because I was always confident it was going to get done, and he was always telling me why I couldn't get done. And it took me a real long time to realize that diversity in thought was so valuable and so powerful, because it allowed us to actually look at all sides of the coin. And software developers and technology guys tend to think it'll all work out and it'll all work and the software will be fine. And it was good to have that point of view. So by having an inclusive perspective on leadership and empowering the people around you that are thinking differently and have different points of view,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And to have, and not in this particular example, I always enjoyed the fact that people felt it was really empowering that I let the QA team have such a loud voice, but I felt like it was a different perspective. And so that actually not only empowered the QA team, but it also empowered the other teams to speak their voice. And so that inclusivity is so key across every axis.
Yeah, I think that's so good. And I just want to add, like, a technique that leaders can
Hmm.
use is be really careful that your advice or your opinion doesn't come out early, and
Oh,
be a
sure.
collector of information,
Right.
because that invites that the
Absolutely.
diversity in thought. And so I love that I know who you're talking about,
Yeah.
who he taught you that. And such a
Yep.
great, like, just think about, you have held on to this for years.
Oh my gosh, that was 20 years ago, easily. And yeah, I think just being able to sit back and allow people to speak up,
Yeah.
is super important.
Yeah, and it has a bigger impact on influence is something or power is something that you can't just ask for. You can't just
Exactly right.
demand like
Right.
you are going to respect me, you're going to do this.
Hmm.
It happens over time. And what people don't realize is that servant leadership or that
Hmm.
that lack of focus on you
Hmm.
actually increases that influence.
Oh,
And it's
absolutely.
not something that's supposed to make you feel really good. It's just supposed to be something that's a tool you can get things done.
That's right. And I think, yeah, you can use, again, go back to that hierarchical military, very org chart structured power. You can get things done,
Yeah,
but that's a short term game, right? And if you
totally.
want to be a leader that's going to have longevity, that's going to grow people, that's going to grow your firm, your group, your company, your department, your team, looking at power in this more progressive way, I think is super.
All right. So the three things as we look at power as a tool and not a weapon, what are they, James?
Collaboration. Be a collaborative person when it comes to that. Bring lots of people together. Second, remember servant leadership. Take a step back, your team will move forward. And then third, be inclusive. Ensure other voices are being heard because those perspectives are going to ensure that there is a greater outcome, and sharing that power goes a long way.
Awesome. Awesome. One of my favorites right here, right now, because I love this
Great
topic
topic.
so
That's a
much.
good one.
So thanks for joining us. And James and I are both on LinkedIn. So please reach out to us, give us your questions, be a quickster along with us, our tribe, right?
That's right.
So find us there, connect with us. We're so glad you joined us today. Continue to listen. And if you think somebody needs to hear this about power, feel free to share it. But so thanks for being here. We appreciate you.